Believers, I've spoken about decrees and declarations in the live stream I made yesterday. There is one thing you need to understand about decreeing, and that is that decrees are for specific situations. Now, pagans also decree, but they decree with demonic spirits. Pagans, they set things in motion in the spirit world and it manifests in the material. But the pagans rely on cycles. So everything pagans do are of a cyclical nature. That's obvious. I've explained that before on this channel. Understand also that mainstream media also decrease. Yes, mainstream media decrees and declares. But they often decree more than they declare because there's not so much for them to declare because they have no stable basis to rely on. Just know that every time you watch mainstream media, you are being decreed upon. And it's not only mainstream media, you also have corporations doing this via advertisements. Every time you encounter a billboard promoting some product, you are being decreed upon. Pornography, I'm talking about visual sexual pornography because pornography doesn't relate to sexual imagery. Pornography is anytime you are promised something in a visual manner that will not be good for you, but you think it's good. When it comes to sexual pornography, every time you watch it, you're being decreed upon. So understand this. Every time anyone future fakes an outcome for you through a suggestion, that's a decree also. Let me explain. Let's say that you have a woman, 25, and she's single, but she really wants to get married. And then she has an aunt who is a bit bitter in life, and the aunt tells her, "You'll never get the husband if you keep dressing so old fashioned like that." What did she say? She is suggesting blame on her niece for not being able to get a husband because the niece is so called old fashioned. So, what she is saying is the moment you dress in a more progressive way, the husband will be there. That is the decree she made on her niece. Now, the niece has the option to counter what she has heard. The moment she does not counter constructively the decree of that aunt, that decree has become a seed in her mind and in her energy field, and it's going to grow. So within a few weeks, she'll begin to purchase new clothes, and she's not even aware she's doing it. She'll begin to purchase new clothes, she'll begin to dress differently, and the people around her are going to know that she has changed. That's how people experience it, as if she's changed. She's now wearing shorter skirts, she's wearing high heels now, she's wearing more lipstick than she used to. And indeed, she begins to date several men, and she ends up with a guy, and they marry. So the decree of that aunt worked. But that aunt decreed out of bitterness. So the decree of that aunt was really a curse in disguise. And by that niece not countering the suggested curse or the suggestive witchcraft, she now is operating and walking in the decree of that aunt. And because the aunt decreed out of bitterness, that curse is now unfolding in her life. Okay, let me give another example. Let's say you watch mainstream media and they keep telling you, oh, to beware of Muslim terrorists. Every time on TV you see, oh, there's another beheading in France. Oh, there was an attack on a synagogue. You have all those images of Arab-looking men, and then you have the message Muslim terrorists. It's repeated over and over again. What's going to happen? In the population in France now, people will begin to associate Arab-looking people with the word Muslim terrorist. And because of that, without people are aware of it, they begin to distance themselves from everyone that looks Arab, And the Arab people in France now face discrimination. And now many of them lose their jobs because people don't want to associate with them. So now you have some of those Arab youth in France who are embittered by the violence against them. And now the wound and the hurt of the Arab youth is now fertile soil for radical extremist ideas. So now, indeed, you will have an increase in Arab young men joining terrorist organizations in France. But why? Because the media decreed it. The media decreed it. The people, the masses, did not counter it. They just allowed it to be sown in them. And because it was sown in them, it began to work out through them. It's not that what the media said suddenly took over all the people and the people had no choice. The people had a choice. But because they did not counter what was sown into them, what was sown into them began to manifest in their behavior. But because they didn't pay attention to their own behavior, they just acted out the decree of mainstream media, and now they caused the increase of terrorist violence in France. The amount of terrorist violence was quite low, but mainstream media portrays it as if it was increasing and increasing. That increase did not exist, but because the masses became afraid by the news reports that suggested that there was an increase in terrorist violence, now that decree of mainstream media worked out, and that's what they call a self-fulfilling prophecy. A self-fulfilling prophecy is something that happens in the world. And that simply implies that when mainstream media or some institution decrees something, it works out in the masses. So, understand this. Decrees are made on you every day, not just by people around you, also by institutions. For example, you have those campaigns that are aimed against violence against women. So there's domestic violence against women, and you have campaigns against it. First of all, where are the men and the children who are also victims of domestic violence? Well, okay. And they show you those pictures of women that are beaten up, and they give the message to men, don't rape her. And they tell you, you're a decent guy, you wouldn't do something like this. What are they doing? They are decreeing a pattern of behavior on the men. Namely, that men should never challenge women. Now let me explain how this goes. Nobody would agree that beating up a woman is a good idea as a man. You are physically stronger than the female in most of the cases, and you can easily walk away. Nobody is able to defend that. But look at this. The fact that you only show women as victims of domestic violence and men as perpetrators, they are suggesting that all men are potential perpetrators of violence against women. So they're criminalizing and incriminating all men. That is what they're doing. And because they're incriminating all men, this is an accusation. And with this accusation comes a decree. You will not challenge women. So this is what happens. Let's say this propaganda is played out in society, on billboards, in media, on schools over and over again. And you have a boy of 8 years old that sees this all the way till his 20s. When he's involved with a fiance, his fiance who he's about to marry, and she becomes verbally abusive towards him, he feels that something is off, but it has been decreed on him that he should not challenge women, that women are the victims, and you as a man, you have to make sure that they're not victimized. So when he's the one victimized by a woman, his brain is so messed up that he can't process it. So he tunes out. Then he marries her. And after he marries her, things only get worse. And one day he ends up in a hospital because the wife has poured boiling tea on him. And when this happened, the doctors called the police. And when the police come, the police had to convince him, after hours of talking to him, that what he was in was dangerous and that he should press charge against his wife, and he agreed. Hold up, how did he end up tolerating and enabling violence against himself? It was decreed unto him. And that's what you need to understand. If you don't counter worldly decrees, they'll begin to haunt you. So understand, believers, that every time a decree is decreed upon you or upon your environment, it's going to unfold. If the decree is not Christ-centered, that means it's a curse. Now, you don't resist what has been decreed, because it's already happened. You can't undo that it has happened, but you counter it. So let's go to the example I just gave earlier. If that niece hears her aunt saying that, namely that she will not get any husband if she remains so old-fashioned, she has to say, or she has to decree the following: despite being old-fashioned, the right man will find me and will assist me in better. By doing that, she now has crushed the seed of negativity that was sown in her life. And this is what's haunting many of you, or many of those around you. Seeds of negativity have been sown in their being since childhood, whether it's by their parents or by children at school, or later by employers, or by school teachers, or by college professors, or just by friends, or by lovers. I don't know who did it, but seeds of negativity were sown in them. But look at this. They did not see the situation for what it was. They just thought it's just someone venting or someone just being quote unquote disrespectful. By the way, that whole thing called respect is unbiblical. It's a hoax, so unlearn it. Basic human decency and honor are real. Respect is a hoax. Okay? If you, for example, let me give an example. If you had a teacher who demanded to be addressed as sir, or if it's a woman as ma'am, because they wanted to be validated, and let's say one day you did not validate the teacher, and they became upset with you, and the teacher said something, you should be respectful, or else you won't get anywhere in life. Or the teacher decreed, if you don't respect me, you won't get anything from me. It doesn't have to be a long stretched decree. The fact alone that adult insisted on you validating him or her, they are in the wrong, because they shouldn't be looking for your validation that much to begin with. And the fact that they insisted and felt entitled to you validating them, and you didn't do it, they expressed that bitterness in decreeing bad on you. Now, what do? You counter it. And if necessary, leave the situation. If it's in a classroom, leave the classroom. If it's at work, leave the workplace. I'm telling you, anytime negativity is decreed and you don't counter it with good decrees, you are giving it room to grow. And when it's grown, it will be more difficult to uproot it. It is possible, but it will be more difficult. Let me just go back to the example I gave of that guy who was brain damaged by the decrees of feminists through those anti-domestic violence campaigns. He was groomed by those campaigns to become the scapegoat as well as the victim of domestic violence himself. If he was in his teenage years and he realized what was going on, or someone would have informed him and something was done about what was decreed, he would have avoided being married to a sociopath. But now he's married to a sociopath and even end up in hospital. He can divorce her, but now he has kids with her, so that's going to be difficult. So now it's more difficult to deal with it. It's best to deal with such things early on. So it's very important to counter self-fulfilling prophecies. And here's another thing. When people demand you to validate them, especially authority figures, beware. Because that entitlement to validation itself is a spell they're putting on you. Oh yes. When an authority figure demands you to validate them, they're putting a spell on you. I don't care if it's a police officer or a teacher in school or one of your parents or um, or a government official or the head of state. Anytime they insist on you validating them and they cannot justify why they have to be validated that much, it's not anytime their demand is not Christ-centered, it's a spell. Anytime they make an example of you by punishing you, they are telling other people, if I don't get what I want, something bad happens. So that's a spell they're putting on the masses at your expense. Do not take this lightly, believers. Do not. Be alert and counter narcissistic decrees with Christ-centered decrees. Be at peace.